My name is Marcus, and at 28, I never expected my life to change because of a broken water heater. I work as a freelance graphic designer from my cramped studio apartment in Portland's Pearl District, surviving on coffee, instant noodles, and the occasional commission that pays enough to keep the lights on. My days blur together in a haze of digital canvases and client revisions, the glow of my monitor my only companion most evenings. Portland's creative scene is supposed to be vibrant and welcoming, but after 3 years here, I've managed to remain mostly invisible. My college friends scattered to different cities after graduation, chasing dreams in tech companies and marketing firms. I chose the solitary path of independent art, convincing myself that isolation bred creativity. The truth was simpler and more painful. After my ex-girlfriend Sarah left me for her law school study partner, declaring I was too immature for a real relationship, I'd built walls around myself thick enough to keep everyone out. My building is one of those converted warehouses that developers market as artist lofts, but really just means thin walls, unreliable plumbing, and neighbors you pass in the hallway without making eye contact. I'd been living there for 2 years without learning a single person's name, until the morning my water heater decided to flood my kitchen. I was knee-deep in panic, watching brown water seep into my art supplies, when Mrs. Chen from the building management knocked on my door. Behind her stood a woman I'd glimpsed in the elevator but never spoken to, tall, with prematurely silver hair she wore in a sleek bob, and the kind of confident posture that suggested she handled crises for a living. "This is Dr. Sophia Reeves, Mrs. Chen explained, gesturing to the woman. "She lives on the 4th floor. She's offered to help coordinate the repairs since she's dealt with building maintenance issues before." Sophia stepped forward, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, businesslike. "I'm a trauma surgeon at OHSU," she said, her voice carrying the calm authority I'd expect from someone who made life or death decisions daily. "I've been through this exact scenario twice in my own unit. The key is acting fast to prevent mold." At 44, Sophia had the kind of presence that commanded attention, not through loudness or drama, but through quiet competence. She took charge of my disaster with surgical precision, making calls to contractors while I stood there dripping and useless. Within an hour, she'd arranged for emergency water extraction, temporary heating, and a reliable plumber for the next morning. "Thank you," I managed, finally finding my voice as the chaos settled. "I don't know what I would have done." She smiled then, the first crack in her professional demeanor. "Probably the same thing I did my first time, panic for 20 minutes, then call everyone in the phone book." She glanced around my apartment, taking in the easels, canvases, and scattered art supplies. "You're an artist. Graphic designer," I corrected automatically, though the distinction felt hollow. "Trying to be, anyway." "The trying is the hardest part," she said, and something in her tone suggested she understood failure more intimately than her success implied. That evening, she knocked on my door with a thermos of soup and a stack of towels. "Thought you might need these," she said, her earlier formality replaced by something warmer. "Mind if I check how the drying is going?" We ended up sitting on my salvaged couch, sharing soup and talking until nearly midnight. Sophia told me about her divorce 3 years prior, 15 years of marriage to a fellow surgeon who decided she was too dedicated to her career, and not enough to their relationship. "The irony," she said, with a bitter laugh, was that he'd been the one pushing her to work longer hours, to climb the hospital hierarchy, until she'd lost herself in the pursuit of his version of success. I opened up about Sarah, about feeling like I was perpetually behind everyone else my age, still figuring out basic life skills while my peers bought houses and planned families. Sophia listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that showed she was really hearing me. "You know what I've learned," she said as the evening wound down. "Age is just numbers on a calendar. Maturity comes from how you handle the unexpected flooding in your apartment, not how many years you've been alive." The next morning, the plumber arrived, a chatty guy named Rick who treated the broken water heater like a puzzle to solve rather than a catastrophe to endure. As he worked, Sophia appeared with coffee and pastries from the bakery downstairs. "You don't have to keep helping," I told her, though I hoped she wouldn't stop. "I know," she replied, settling onto my makeshift kitchen setup. "But I like your company. It's been a while since I've talked to someone who doesn't spend their day discussing medical procedures." Over the following weeks, our interactions evolved from crisis management to genuine friendship. Sophia would stop by after her long shifts, sometimes still in scrubs, exhausted but unwilling to go home to her empty apartment. I'd make coffee, the one domestic skill I'd mastered, and we'd talk about everything and nothing. she was fascinated by my art, asking detailed questions about my process, my inspiration, my goals. No one had shown that kind of interest in my work since college professors who were paid to care. When I mentioned struggling to find my artistic voice, she surprised me by saying, "Maybe you're looking in the wrong places. Art isn't about finding your voice, it's about having the courage to use the one you already have." One rainy Thursday evening, Sophia arrived with Thai takeout and an unusual request. "I have a favor to ask," she said, unpacking containers on my newly functional kitchen counter. "My sister's daughter, Lily, is staying with me for 2 weeks while my sister handles some work training in San Francisco. She's 10, full of questions, and I'm not exactly equipped for entertaining children." I'd never spent significant time around kids, but something about Sophia's slightly panicked expression was endearing. "What kind of help do you need?" "Moral support, mostly," she admitted. "And maybe someone who understands creativity. Lily's been asking about art classes, and I thought, maybe you could show her some basics." "I'd pay you, of course." The next Saturday, Lily bounded into my studio with the energy of a caffeine-addicted hummingbird. She had Sophia's dark eyes but lighter hair, and the kind of curious intelligence that adults find both charming and exhausting. "Are you Aunt Sophia's boyfriend?" was her opening question, delivered with zero filter. I nearly choked on my coffee. "We're friends," I managed, glancing at Sophia, who was studying the ceiling with sudden intensity. "But you like her," Lily pressed, settling at my drafting table like she owned it. "I can tell by how you look at her." "Lily," Sophia warned gently, "some questions are too personal. But mommy says adults make things more complicated than they need to be," Lily replied, picking up a charcoal pencil. "She says sometimes people like each other but pretend they don't because they're scared." From the mouths of babes. I caught Sophia's eye and saw my own uncertainty reflected there, the careful dance we'd been doing around feelings neither of us was ready to name. Over the next 2 weeks, Lily became our unofficial matchmaker, though she probably didn't realize it. She'd insist we all go to the Saturday market together, then conveniently need bathroom breaks that left Sophia and me standing awkwardly close while she disappeared. She'd request bedtime stories that somehow required both of us to tell them, curled up on Sophia's couch with a book between us. "Aunt Sophia," she said one evening as I helped with her art homework, "when adults love each other, do they have to get married?" Sophia paused in her grading of medical charts. "Not necessarily, sweetheart. Love comes in lots of different forms. But if they do get married, do they automatically have babies?" I felt the familiar heat creep up my neck. Lily's innocent questions had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things we weren't discussing. "Well," Sophia said carefully, "babies come when adults decide they want to create a family together. It's about choice, not just biology." Lily nodded seriously, then turned to me. "Marcus, do you want a family someday?" The question hung in the air like incense, heavy and unavoidable. I looked at Sophia, at this remarkable woman who'd swept into my chaotic life and somehow made it make sense, and realized the answer had been growing inside me for weeks. "Yeah," I said softly, "I think I do." Sophia's smile was radiant, transforming her tired features into something luminous. "Me too," she whispered, and the admission felt like stepping off a cliff together. But real life has a way of intruding on perfect moments. The morning Lily was scheduled to return to San Francisco, Sophia got called in for an emergency surgery, a multi-car accident that would keep her at the hospital for the next 12 hours. She asked if I could handle Lily's departure, make sure she got safely to the airport shuttle. "Of course," I said, though the responsibility felt enormous. This child wasn't mine, but I'd grown attached to her boundless energy and unfiltered observations. At the airport shuttle pickup, Lily hugged me fiercely. "Take care of Aunt Sophia," she said into my shoulder. "She pretends she's tough, but she gets lonely." "I will," I promised, meaning it more than I'd meant anything in years. But as the shuttle pulled away, I felt the weight of what we'd been building. Sophia and I existed in a bubble of late-night conversations and shared meals, but what happened when real life, her demanding career, my unstable income, the 16-year age gap between us, crashed into our carefully constructed intimacy? The answer came sooner than expected. That evening, exhausted from her surgery, Sophia collapsed onto my couch with the kind of bone-deep weariness that spoke of more than just one difficult day. "Lost him," she said simply, staring at her hands. 23 years old. Motorcycle accident. "We did everything right, but sometimes everything right isn't enough." I didn't know what to say to that kind of pain, so I just held her while she cried, not the dramatic sobbing of movies, but the quiet, devastating tears of someone who'd seen too much loss. This is my life, Marcus, she said when the tears stopped. 12-hour days, life or death decisions, coming home covered in other people's trauma. It's not fair to ask someone to build a relationship around that. You're not asking, I pointed out. I'm choosing. She pulled back to look at me, her eyes red but steady. You're 28. You should be with someone your own age, someone who can give you the normal relationship timeline, dating, moving in together, marriage, kids while you're both still young enough to enjoy them. What if I don't want normal? I asked, surprising myself with the intensity in my voice. What if I want you, complicated schedule and all? What if I want us to figure it out together? She studied my face like she was looking for cracks in my resolve. The hospital gossip will be brutal, she warned. They'll say I'm robbing the cradle, that you're looking for a sugar mama. People will judge us. Let them, I said, remembering Lily's simple wisdom about adults making things too complicated. I'd rather face their judgment with you than spend my life wondering what we could have been. The transformation in her expression was worth every uncertain moment that had led us here. Hope, tentative but real, replaced the resignation in her eyes. I've never been with someone younger, she admitted. I don't know how to navigate this. Neither do I confessed. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we get to write our own rules. We started slowly, deliberately. Instead of falling into the relationship patterns we'd learned from past failures, we created new ones. Sophia would text me between surgeries, not romantic messages, just small connections that kept us tethered throughout her long days. I'd leave sketches on her door when she was working late, little drawings that captured moments we'd shared. The age difference, which had seemed insurmountable in theory, mattered less in practice. Sophia's emotional intelligence complemented my creative instincts. Her financial stability took pressure off my career anxiety, while my flexibility allowed me to support her unpredictable schedule. We weren't trying to fit into some predetermined relationship mold, we were building something uniquely ours. 3 months later, Lily visited again, this time for a full week during summer break. The dynamic had shifted. Instead of awkwardly navigating around our feelings, Sophia and I moved together with the easy rhythm of a couple who'd found their groove. I knew you'd figure it out, Lily announced on her second day, watching us cook breakfast together with the satisfaction of a successful matchmaker. Adults always make things harder than they need to be, but you two finally got smart. Oh, is that how it works? Sophia laughed, ruffling Lily's hair. We should have consulted you months ago. Definitely, Lily agreed seriously. I'm very good at knowing when people belong together. That week felt like a preview of a future I'd never dared imagine. Sophia teaching Lily basic first aid while I sketched them both, capturing the gentle way she explained complex concepts and Lily's rapt attention. The three of us hiking Forest Park, Lily chattering about everything she saw while Sophia and I shared the comfortable silence of people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. One evening, as we sat on Sophia's balcony watching the sunset paint Mount Hood in shades of rose and gold, Lily asked another of her penetrating questions. If you two get married, would I be like a flower girl or something? Sophia and I exchanged glances. We'd been together 6 months, but marriage still felt like a conversation for someday, not now. Would you want to be? I asked, curious about her answer. Obviously, Lily said with pre-teen exasperation. But I think you should have a baby first, so I can be a cousin and a flower girl. Lily, Sophia protested, but she was laughing. What? Marcus draws babies all the time in his sketchbook. I've seen them. Now it was my turn to feel heat creep up my neck. It was true, lately, my unconscious doodling had included small figures, family scenes, domestic moments that felt more like wishes than art exercises. Those are just practice drawings, I said weakly. Lily said with the skeptical tone of someone who'd caught adults in an obvious lie. That's why you drew one that looks exactly like Aunt Sophia but with curly hair like yours. Sophia reached across the small table and took my hand, her thumb tracing patterns on my palm. We haven't talked about that yet, she said softly, but there was something in her voice that suggested the conversation wasn't far off. Well, when you do talk about it, Lily said, settling back in her chair like a tiny relationship counselor, remember that love isn't about age or what other people think. It's about choosing each other every day, even when things get hard. Where had this child learned such wisdom? I looked at Sophia, seeing my own wonder reflected in her expression. Who taught you that? Sophia asked gently. Mommy, Lily replied. When Daddy moved out, she said the hardest part wasn't that they stopped loving each other, but that they stopped choosing each other. She said real love is work, but good work, like when Marcus spends hours on a drawing to make it perfect. The weight of her words settled over us like a blessing. Here was this 10-year-old child, product of her parents' divorce, offering us wisdom we'd been struggling to find on our own. That night, after Lily was asleep in Sophia's guest room, we lay in bed talking about the future in concrete terms for the first time. Not the vague, someday, conversations we'd had before, but real planning. I want kids with you, Sophia said into the darkness. I know it's complicated, my age, my career, the timing of everything. But when I watch you with Lily, when I see those drawings she mentioned, I want that with you. Even though I'm still figuring out my own life. I asked. Even though I'm not exactly stable yet. Especially because of that, she said, turning to face me. Stability isn't about having everything figured out. It's about being committed to figuring things out together. We were married the following spring, in a small ceremony in Sophia's parents' backyard in Seattle. Lily was indeed our flower girl, taking her duties so seriously that she practiced walking slowly for weeks beforehand. The guest list was small: her family, my parents who flew in from Denver, a few close friends from the hospital and my art community. The age gap that had once felt insurmountable became just another detail in our story. Yes, some people had opinions: Sophia's colleagues who whispered about her midlife crisis, my college friends who couldn't understand why I'd settled down so young. But their judgment felt distant, irrelevant compared to the solid reality of what we'd built together. 6 months after the wedding, Sophia found me in my studio, now a proper space we'd rented together in the Alberta Arts District, staring at a pregnancy test with a mix of terror and elation on my face. So, I said, holding up the little plastic stick, Lily's going to get her wish about being a cousin. Sophia's face went through a rapid succession of emotions: surprise, joy, concern, then pure radiance. Really? Really? I confirmed, and then she was in my arms, both of us laughing and crying simultaneously. The pregnancy wasn't easy. At 45, Sophia was considered high risk, which meant more appointments, more monitoring, more opportunities for anxiety to creep in. My own fears centered around readiness: was I mature enough, stable enough, to be someone's father? But Lily, now 11 and even wiser, helped put things in perspective during one of her visits. Finding me pacing the hospital waiting room while Sophia underwent routine testing, she plopped down beside me with the directness I'd grown to love. You're scared, she observed. Terrified, I admitted. Good, she said matter-of-factly. Mommy says the best parents are the ones who worry about being good parents. It's the ones who don't worry that you should be scared of. Our daughter, Elena, arrived on a snowy February morning after 12 hours of labor that tested every ounce of Sophia's considerable strength. When the doctor placed her in my arms, this tiny, perfect person we'd created together, I understood for the first time what people meant about instant, unconditional love. Sophia, exhausted but glowing, watched me hold our daughter with tears streaming down her face. Look at you, she whispered. Natural father. Look at us, I corrected, leaning down to kiss her forehead. Look at what we made. The early months were a blur of sleepless nights, feeding schedules, and the steep learning curve of new parenthood. Sophia had taken 3 months of leave, the longest break from surgery she'd taken in years, and we navigated those first weeks together, figuring out the rhythm of caring for Elena while maintaining our relationship with each other. My art evolved during this period, influenced by the profound shift in my perspective. The commercial work that had sustained me felt less important than capturing these fleeting moments of early parenthood: Elena's tiny hand wrapped around my finger, Sophia singing lullabies in the pre-dawn darkness, the way morning light filtered through our bedroom window as our small family slowly woke to another day. One piece in particular, a series of sketches showing the progression from Sophia's pregnancy through Elena's first month, caught the attention of a gallery owner who'd been following my work. She offered me a solo show, my first, centered around themes of family, love, and transformation. Your work has changed, she told me during our planning meeting, Elena sleeping peacefully in her carrier beside my chair. There's a depth now, an emotional resonance that wasn't there before. Parenthood suits you. Parenthood and partnership, I corrected, glancing at Sophia, who was reviewing patient files while simultaneously rocking the carrier with her foot, the kind of multitasking that still amazed me. I don't think one would work without the other. The gallery opening was surreal, seeing my most personal work displayed for public consumption, watching strangers react to images of my family, our love, our life together. Sophia moved through the crowd with Elena strapped to her chest, pointing out details in the paintings to anyone who would listen, proud in a way that made my heart swell. Lily, now 12 and even more sophisticated, appointed herself unofficial art critic for the evening. "This one's my favorite," she announced, standing before a large canvas that showed Sophia in scrubs, exhausted after a long surgery, holding newborn Elena for the first time. "You can see how tired Aunt Sophia is, but also how happy. It's like love making everything worth it." An art critic from the local paper overheard her comment and asked permission to quote her in his review. Lily agreed with the seriousness of someone accustomed to having her opinions taken seriously. The show was a success, not just commercially, though several pieces sold, but personally. Seeing our story reflected back to me through the eyes of strangers, hearing their reactions to the journey we'd taken from that first flooded apartment to this moment, validated something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. We'd created something beautiful, something worth celebrating. As we drove home that night, Elena finally asleep after being admired by dozens of gallery visitors, Sophia reached over and took my hand. "Proud of you," she said simply. "Proud of us," I replied, a response that had become our standard whenever one of us achieved something significant. Because everything we'd built together. 2 years later, as I write this, we're planning to buy a house, something with a yard for Elena to run in, a proper studio space for my growing art practice, and room for Sophia's medical journals that seem to multiply exponentially. Lily, now 14 and preparing for high school, has declared her intention to study art and medicine, planning to become the world's first doctor artist. "Someone needs to bridge the gap between healing bodies and healing souls," she explained with teenage seriousness. "That's what you two do for each other." The age difference that once felt like an insurmountable obstacle has become just another thread in the tapestry of our relationship. Yes, Sophia will turn 50 before I turn 35. Yes, we're at different life stages in some ways. But we've learned that compatibility isn't about being the same age or having identical experiences, it's about choosing to grow in the same direction, supporting each other's dreams while building new ones together. Sometimes, late at night when Elena is sleeping and Sophia is reading medical journals in bed beside me, I think about that flooded apartment, about the woman who knocked on my door with soup and towels and ended up changing everything. About Lily's innocent questions that forced us to examine what we really wanted. About the courage it took to choose love over fear, partnership over protection. Our love story didn't follow the traditional timeline: meet in college, date for years, marry, buy a house, have children in careful succession. Instead, we found each other in the middle of our separate struggles, chose to face those struggles together, and built something stronger for having weathered them as a team. Elena's first words were, "Mama," and "Dada," but her third was, "Lily," which seemed appropriate for the little girl who'd first suggested we belong together. When Lily heard about this milestone over FaceTime, she grinned with the satisfaction of someone whose predictions had come true. "See," she said, now 15 and preparing for her driver's test. "I told you adults just make things more complicated than they need to be. Love is simple, you just have to be brave enough to choose it." As I finish writing this story, Sophia is in the backyard teaching Elena to identify different flowers in our garden, their voices drifting through the open window of my studio. Lily is visiting for spring break, sketching in the corner while ostensibly helping with garden lessons but mostly just enjoying being part of our chaotic, beautiful family. The neighbors here know our story, the doctor and the artist, the woman who took a chance on a younger man, the man who learned that love isn't about age but about showing up for each other every day. Some still find it unusual, but most have accepted us as just another family in the neighborhood, dealing with the universal challenges of work-life balance, parenting, and maintaining romance in the midst of domestic routine. Yesterday, Elena asked her first complex question about family relationships, inspired by seeing other families at the playground. "Daddy, why is Mama older than you but you're still married?" I knelt down to her level, remembering Lily's early questions that had forced Sophia and me to examine our own assumptions about love and compatibility. "Because age is just a number, sweetheart," I explained. "What matters is that Mama and I choose each other every day, that we take care of each other and love you and work together to make our family strong." She nodded with the serious consideration that 3-year-olds bring to important concepts, then ran off to climb the monkey bars with Lily spotting her. Good answer, Sophia said, settling beside me on the bench where we'd been watching Elena play. Very diplomatic. I learned from the best, I replied, thinking of all the difficult conversations we'd navigated together, all the societal expectations we'd challenged, all the fears we'd faced down in service of building something real. Lily was right, you know, Sophia said, following my gaze to where our daughter was shrieking with delight as she swung across the monkey bars. Adults do make things more complicated than they need to be. Sometimes the best thing you can do is trust your heart and see what happens. Even when your heart leads you to someone 16 years older who works impossible hours and comes home covered in other people's trauma. I teased. Even then, she confirmed, leaning against my shoulder. Especially then. As the sun set over Portland's skyline, painting the playground in golden light, I watched my wife help our daughter navigate playground equipment while our honorary niece documented the moment in her sketchbook. This wasn't the life I'd planned at 28, but it was better than anything I could have imagined. Love, I've learned, isn't about finding someone who fits your predetermined criteria. It's about recognizing the person who makes you want to be your best self, who challenges you to grow while accepting who you are in the moment. Age, background, career paths, these are just details. What matters is the daily choice to build something together, to face whatever comes with united hearts and shared purpose. From a flooded apartment to a gallery opening, from tentative first conversations to the comfortable rhythm of established partnership, from the fear of societal judgment to the confidence that comes from knowing you've chosen well, this is our love story. Unconventional, perhaps, but undeniably ours.